There was a first century Jewish rabbi named some of you thought I was going to say Jesus. His name was Akiva. Akiva was walking home one evening to his home in Capernaum. As he was walking along the northern shores of Galilee. And as the sun was setting, he was reciting his scriptures like any good Jew would do at sunset. And as he's reciting the scriptures, he's rocking back and forth. Because for them, it's about rhythm. And it's about memorization and meditation and immersion. And as he's reciting the scriptures, it's getting darker and darker. And instead of turning right, Rabbi Akiva turns left. So instead of winding up at the city gates of Capernaum, he arrives instead at this Roman fortress. And when he gets there, there's a loud, booming voice from above, and this booming voice says to him, "Who are you and why are you here?" Rabbi Akiva looks around, and then he finally looks up, and he sees a Roman guard at the top of the fortress. And again, this voice says to him, "Who are you and why are you here?" To which Rabbi Akiva responds, "How much are they paying you to ask me those questions?" And the Roman guard replies, 3 denarii per week. To which Rabbi Akiva responds, "I will double your pay if you come to my home every single morning and ask me those same 2 questions. Who are you and why are you here?" Galatians chapter 3 raises questions about identity and purpose. Paul is always reminding his people, the people of faith in Galatia, who they are and why they're here. Now remember, in this letter to the Galatians, you get some of Paul's harshest language because Paul is completely fed up with his people. They have left the gospel, the good news, the message of God's love for all people through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. They've left this message for some, what Paul calls some other gospel. Here's how he opens chapter 3. "You crazy Galatians, did someone put a hex on you? Have you taken leave of your senses? Something crazy has happened, for it's obvious that you no longer have the crucified Jesus in clear focus in your lives. His sacrifice on the cross was certainly set before you clearly enough. Let me put this question to you. How did your new life begin? Was it by working your heads off to please God? Or was it by responding to God's message to you?" And let's pause there for just a moment. In other words, who are you? What's your story? When did transformation happen in your life? What was it like? What did it feel like? How might you describe it? You see, for the Galatians, they had been introduced to this message, but they had left for some other message. They left to go back to the law. Now, when we talk about the law, we're talking about the Torah, first 5 books of the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible. In the Torah, you have hundreds of laws. They left to go back to these hundreds of laws. Is there anything wrong with these laws? No, not really. But they were using them and abusing them. They were using them as their measuring stick to see how and where they measured up with God. What does the law do? The law told them everything they're not, but what they could possibly become. You're not this, but if you can do more of this and get it right, then you could be this thing. The law was their measuring stick. It let them know exactly where they stood with God. Now let me ask you a question. In your life, does a long list of who you're not, does that ever really transform your heart? So my wife, Tammy, and I were leading this group called Why on Wednesday evenings in our home, packing in 20 people in our living room like sardines. And the way we structured this thing is kind of like a storyline. Some of y'all remember Storyline from a couple of years ago. That's how we're starting it. But in Storyline, we shared our entire stories from here, the whole timeline, all the way to present, now. We're not doing that in this Y group. Instead, what we're doing is we're asking each participant to take 10 minutes, because there's 20 people, and that takes a long time. Time is limited. Take 10 minutes and share with us your most defining moments. Because when we know your most defining moments, and we get a glimpse of who you are, and it's always amazing to me. It's actually stunning. When I hear people's stories, there's a same theme that rolls in all of our stories. When we know who we are versus when we don't know who we are. When we don't know who we are, bad things happen. When we know who we are, we tend to live these really incredible stories. We tend to do amazing things. We tend to live abundant life. We tend to care about spreading abundant life to others. When you don't know who you are, you tend to make the unhealthiest of choices. You might stay in that unhealthy relationship, or we isolate, we disconnect from the most meaningful things. We hurt people, we manipulate people, we stay in that addiction, we stay hurting those that we love most. It's just how we do. And so 2 weeks ago when we had the group in our living room, I said to them, you know, some of y'all you're going to be nervous. Your hands are going to sweat. You're going to get butterflies. This is okay. This is good. You can do it. Some of you, every bone in your body is going to say, back out of this. Don't do it. But you can do it. And I explained to the group that through the course of Storyline and through seminary and ordination, I had shared my story dozens of times. And if I can do it, then you can do it. And then last week came, where a different group of people, not a church group of people, a different group of people invited me to share my story of experience, strength, and hope. And all of a sudden, I felt like my Y group participants. My chest gets tight. And I thought, oh, me share that story? Well, I'm not used to sharing that story, not through that lens. You know what? I might be busy that day. I don't think I'm going to do that. So I'm doing it. Next Wednesday, I'm doing it. And you know, when I reflect on my story, part of it's just really simple. Really simple. There was years in my life, there was a period that was really simple. I didn't feel like I was enough. That's it. I just didn't feel like I was enough. It's not like anyone ever pulled me aside and said, hey, by the way, Ryan, you're just not enough as a person. That's not usually how it works. But when it came to this life stuff, I thought, man, I just missed class that day. That's it, I just missed class that day. When everyone else learned how to do life, I missed it. Because I don't really get it, and y'all are making it look easy, and I don't get it. And when it comes to being a son, I must have missed that day of class 2 when everyone else learned how to be a good son. I didn't learn it. I didn't get it. And it seemed like in my life I tended to screw that up a lot. And when it came to being a good partner in marriage, especially in the beginning of our marriage, I thought, man, another class that I missed because I just don't get it. And you all are seemingly doing this so simple. What did I miss? And when I don't feel good about myself, when I don't feel like I'm enough, that leads me to isolation, disconnect from the most meaningful. That leads generally to poor decisions, and that leads to working harder and trying harder to convince everyone around me that I am enough and that I truly am somebody. And that is an isolating existence. It's why Paul in his letters says the phrase in Christ, an identity marker, 87 times. He is reminding people who they are. So Paul continues in Galatians chapter 3. So, are you going to continue this craziness? For only crazy people would think they could complete by their own efforts what was begun by God. If you weren't smart enough or strong enough to begin it, how do you suppose you could perfect it? Did you go through this whole painful learning process for nothing? It is not yet a total loss. And I lost my place. It is not yet a total loss, but it certainly will be if you keep this up. Answer this question. Does the God who lavishly provides you with his own presence, his Holy Spirit, working things in your lives you could never do for yourselves, does he do these things because of your strenuous moral striving or because you trust him to do them in you? So allow me to shift gears for a moment, because this is actually why I think the story of the prodigal son is such a resonating story in our culture. And when I say our culture, I mean it's a story that resonates far beyond just church folk. Do you remember this story? It's told in Luke's gospel. Do you remember the younger son? He comes to the father, and he says, "Hey, Pops, I actually wish you were dead so I could have my share of the inheritance." And the father says, "Well, you can, because it's yours, and it's actually always been yours, so you can have it." And so the younger son says, "Great." He takes the money. He runs off in isolation. He creates this path of destruction. He squanders everything he has on the most unhealthy of things. And then he gets all down on himself and thinks he can't go back home. But finally, things become desperate enough. He drags his sorry butt back home. And do you remember where the father was? The father was in the driveway. So I'm embellishing a bit, but this is exactly how it happened. The father was in the driveway, arms wide open, and says, "Welcome home." And then he begins to shout in the streets, "My boy's home. We're going to throw a party. My boy's home. It's time to party." Now, do you remember the older son, how he reacted to what was happening? This is also why it resonates so deeply. The older son stands like this. "Seriously, Pops? That's how this is going to go down?" He takes his inheritance and squanders it, blows the money, and comes back home and you throw him a party? What about me? I've been here the whole time. I've done everything you've asked me to. I'm the good son. And how does the father respond? "What? You have always been with me. All that I have is yours. All that I have is yours." Do you see how the father in the story, and let's just all make this big assumption together that the father represents God, and I realize there's gender issues there, but this is a first century image, so work with it. The father reinterprets the story and gives them a new story. Tells a different version of who they are. How many of us have tried to make God about some sort of transaction? God gives me this, so I'll give God this. God has given me a great gift, but in order to make that gift effective, I must do something. Or if I pray this way, then surely God will answer me this way. It's about transaction versus trust. Transaction always says, this is what you got to do next. Trust says, do you trust this version of the story? Because this is actually who you are. Now here's the thing about gospel. The good news, the gospel message, it never proclaims. It is never an announcement about how terrible you are or about how terrible the things you've done, how terrible those things are, and how you must change everything. But it is always an announcement about your true self, about who you are. Is there bad news involved in all of this? Yes. Anytime there's good news, there there's bad news. What's the bad news? The bad news is some stories have to be left behind. And let's just be honest. Some of you have taken a beating in life. You've been told who you are, who you aren't, you're not good enough, you're never enough, and you actually begin to believe it. And because you believe it, you begin to live in ways that flow out of that. Those stories have to be left behind if you want to live into the new story. Paul continues. This is how he closes his argument in chapter 3. Now, before faith came, we were imprisoned and guarded under the law until faith would be revealed. Therefore, the law was our disciplinarian until Christ came, so that we might be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, which is through Jesus Christ, now that faith has come, we are no longer subject to a disciplinarian. Hold on to that word disciplinarian, because this is absolutely fascinating. In the Greek, that word translates like this: pedagogos. Say that fun Greek word with me, pedagogos. Come on now, shout it out, pedagogos. In the first century Greco-Roman world, the pedagogos was a guard. It was a guard or a guide for these young boys in the Greco-Roman household. And they were charged with supervising the life and morals of these young boys. Some historians tell us that these young boys couldn't even as much as step out of the house without having their pedagogos by their side, and this would go on until the age of manhood. So you can imagine every young boy in the first century Greco-Roman world would have hated the idea of a pedagogos. Now, what's Paul saying here? A pedagogos, this is good. Young boys need the pedagogos. But it's temporary. Its role is temporary, and it was always meant to be temporary. You grow out of it. Is the law worthless? Of course not. The law was good. It kept the Israelites on the straight and narrow. But the law was temporary, and it was always meant to be temporary. Christ came. There's a new law, and this law is love. What's God interested in? Circumcision. But not that kind of circumcision. Circumcision of the heart, the interiors. What's the good news? You don't have to go back to the pedagogos. You don't have to go back. A new thing is happening. You are free. Now, with freedom comes what? Responsibility. Because when you know who you are, then you can more clearly see why you're here and what you're up to. So Paul closes chapter 3 with this. He says, so good, y'all know who you are now. Now let me remind you who we are. Some scholars say this is the height of the Galatia experience, or the height of the Galatian letter. In our culture, we just call it what it is. It's Paul's mic drop. He says this: there is no longer Jew or Greek, there's no longer slave or free, there's no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Christ Jesus. So, all the barriers you've been building, all the ways you've been keeping people out and telling them what they have to do to be part of the God thing, all the ways you've been isolating yourselves because of fear or because of hurt, all the ways you've been keeping people at distance, stop. Stop doing it. It's not who you are. What we do flows out of who we believe we are. And the story that we're telling ourselves deeply shapes the way we live in the world. If you believe fundamentally about yourself, if you believe at your deepest core that you're not enough, that you're unworthy, then you will live in ways that flow out of that. And in my experience, if you believe you're not enough, your first impulse will always be isolation. But if you believe you're worthy, if you believe you're enough, if you actually believe the story of who you are, if you actually believe that grace is nothing earned, but it's always a gift and it's always freely given, if you believe that, if you know who you are, then chances are you know what to do. And you are more interested in making the world a little bit more about this. More love. One love. More peace, more justice, more forgiveness, more kindness, more of all that good stuff that we all yearn for. That's what you're interested in. Who are you? And why are you here? So during each of these weeks in this series, we are inviting storytellers to join us. This morning's storyteller is Chloe Richardson, one of our St. Luke's youth. Chloe showed me this letter that she received, and it is moving and inspiring, and I've asked Chloe to come here and share with us how a barrier of isolation has recently been knocked down, so thank you for being here with us, Chloe.
Well, okay. So just like a backstory, over the summer, I went on a mission trip to Slidell, Louisiana, and while we were there, there's a couple other churches there, and for us, it would have been easy to just isolate ourselves and stay with our own church group, because that's awkward, and we don't want to talk to the other people, but that's not what we did, and we ended up making a connection with people, and with more than one church, actually, but the one that, stuck with me, really, is this girl, Carol, and she was from Tennessee, and she wrote us a letter, and wanted to share that with you guys. So, dear friends, it has been wonderful getting to know all of y'all. Yes, that's how you spell it. Even though we haven't been friends for 24 hours, I feel blessed to be able to call you wonderful human friends. I wish you the best of luck in Colorado, and I will miss each of you dearly. This week I have learned that everyone has a poverty and a wealth. This means that everyone lacks something in their life that they need, and everyone has a wealth of something that they must share with others to fulfill each other's needs. I'm bringing this up because y'all have fulfilled a poverty in my life. I lack happiness and joy often in my life. I also feel that I lack a stable family that supports me. My family struggles to remain unified. My parents are divorced, and I grew up with an alcoholic father who is extremely greedy. In some ways, I have always felt corrupt by my family and other people. Thank you for making me feel happy and wanted. Even though we had a weird conversation about Tennessee accents, it made me feel very happy and important. A couple weeks from now, I may remember what songs or what we talked about and the songs that we played on the piano, but I will never forget the way that you guys made me feel. Thanks for being super great, and never lose your spunk and passion for God. And then she continued to write. I believe that testimonies about our faith and life are necessary to share. They show God working in the world through people. This is my story. I've seen God at work in my home. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and at that point in my life, it didn't alter my daily routine or outlook on life very much. My dad tried to fill this hole in his heart with alcohol and many other types of substances, so my brother Alan and I never felt important to him growing up. My mother at that point in time was in college trying to better her life for herself as well as my brother and me. Therefore, we were left with my dad most of the time. We had no idea that what he was doing was wrong. I definitely thought it was normal, and when I was treated poorly, it was always my fault. He soon married another woman, which expanded our family. I had 4 brothers and a new stepmom. The brothers were always super fun to be around, but she was also an alcoholic. The relationship soon turned toxic, and they ended their marriage. This was super confusing to me because I learned at church that we must love each other and care for each other, but that was something that our family severely lacked. God and love was a foreign concept to me. I was never taught about either of those things at home. But life went on as usual. As I grew older, I realized that my family wasn't unified and normal, and my dad definitely had an addiction. I began to see myself as worthless because I felt identified and defined by my family. I went to church every Sunday and Wednesday, but remained withdrawn and unhappy. When I entered the 7th grade, I became old enough to join my church's youth group. I joined, and it helped me understand God and Jesus more. I started to form a relationship with God, and my life seemed to improve. Then one night, I was completing my homework upstairs in my bedroom when I heard the clash of pots and pans. I ran downstairs and found my dad. He was laying on our open flame stove drunk, and he asked me to kill him by lighting the stove. Somehow, I was able to convince him to spare his own life by expressing how much God loves him. In that moment, I knew that was God working through me. But instead of praising God, I became angry at him for putting me in that situation. My identity still felt defined by my father's actions and lifestyle. And a week after the incident, I was removed from his home by CPS, and I have lived in an alternative care type of thing ever since. At this point in life, I felt irrelevant to the world. I broke off my relationship with God, and I truly hated myself. I felt so used and worn out by my family and society. I had been neglected and taken advantage of by other guys. I could not see myself as a worthy recipient of love or care, so I decided to end my own life. Thankfully, there was this urge to stop, though. I instantly got this warm feeling, and I realized that I am worth something to God. He defines me, and He loves me. Since that day, I have devoted myself to Christ. I have uncovered a hidden talent that God gave me for music. Music has helped me connect with other people and God. I now see myself as God sees me every day.
Thank you, Chloe. Our youth are leading the way and knocking down barriers of isolation, aren't they? Let's remove this barrier of isolation, shall we?
I walked in a room to hear my heart think, a place where my fears can be faced. I don't know the truth and I don't know the lie. I don't know the why I must embrace, but my story